Good evening, everyone, and welcome back after the coffee break. I hope all of you are awake, and if you are not, I'll give you some data which will definitely, I think, raise a lot of eyebrows. Kiran, thank you so much for joining us on India Economic Conclave South Chapter. I'll talk about the southern states economy, but my first and obvious question to you, a couple of minutes back, the latest GDP number has been announced, and April to June number is actually 5%. Your first reaction on that?
I think that is shocking. I think no one expected it to be as low as 5%. If this is not a wake-up call for an economic emergency and recognizing the fact that we have a serious economic decline, I don't know what is.
You are calling it an economic emergency?
I think because, this is not something that now we need to track, in the way we've been doing it. Yes, we started off with 7%, 6.8, then 6.5. It was expected to be about 5.8, but what you've just said to me, for me, is shocking, because 5% is not where we should be. I think this is a clear reflection that the economy is not just slowing down, but it's almost come to a grinding halt. Because I think what you're seeing is that it's very clear that consumption has declined steeply, because that's a clear reflection on GDP growth. So we've got to do something fast. This is about making sure that we immediately start looking at urgent measures to bring about economic revival. So that's the way I'm looking at it, saying we can no longer wait and watch. It's now in a mode where you have to react, you have to address, you have to take measures, and urgent measures.
We have spoken to various spokespersons from the government side, and the sense that we get from them is that actually government is willing to do, and they are taking a lot of steps. We have seen some of them, like relief in FDI and a lot of other reforms.
And the recent merger of banks, I think that's also very welcome.
But then what do you think is playing on government's mind? Are they hoping that consumption will revive on its own? Because when we refer to consumption, it's directly linked to the investment that industry will make, and then it also impacts the employment. Because if you're, like, for example, if you're not making investment, obviously you're not going to hire more people. Yeah. So that's a vicious circle, but unfortunately it seems that for us, it's playing out completely on the opposite side or wrong side.
Yeah, so Mihir, I really feel we have to somehow tackle this vicious cycle, break out of it and start finding out ways to create that virtuous cycle with. So I think we have to do that fast. I don't think it's about one set of measures that will do it. It has to have a multi-pronged approach. So it will take a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of bold measures. But I think there are a few low-hanging fruits for us. You need to revive sentiments, I personally feel, to begin with. So for instance, there are three kinds of sentiments that you need to revive. One is the consumer sentiment, okay? The other is the investor sentiment, and the third is the investment sentiment. Because it's all about consumption, investment, and employment. This is what this cycle is about. How do we get that started? So consumption and consumers are very, very key to kickstarting this economy. Now, at the moment, you can see that consumer sentiments is very low, because you're seeing the decline in auto, two-wheelers, white goods, FMCG, real estate, etc., etc., etc. Now that has to be diagnosed very deeply as to what is causing it. Is it high GST of 28% in the auto sector? Is it, the job losses that are happening as a result of, again, this vicious cycle of laying off people because the demand has come down? What is it? So what is it that is going to be key in getting that started? I think that's very, very key to diagnose. And I'm just saying that, yes, it's now like a pop-up toy. You do something here, something else pops up there. So you've got to make sure that you press down all these negative levers. And for that, it requires all stakeholders to come together. There's no point in the government trying to figure it out for every one of us, because they can't. every sector has to work with government to figure out what needs to be done for their sector for revival.
But I'll ask you a straight question. Do you think government is in denial so far about the economic emergency, the word that you used, in recognizing the real threat to sustained growth? Is there a
Well,
denial?
today you can't be in denial, right? I mean,
But are
up
they in
until now
denial?
they were, cautiously optimistic that there could be a revival. But today's data seems to suggest that you cannot be in denial anymore. And I'm told that, the next quarter's numbers are also not going to be looking that great. So if you look at that, then we've got to fix it right now, nip it in the bud. You cannot now afford to wait longer, is what I'm saying. That's why I called it an emergency, saying that it is about time that the government now starts acting fast, taking rapid and big measures to see what can be done. There are many measures. I've been talking about it. I've been talking about, the GST, just get rid of the 28% GST slab. Let's also make sure that we bring down the GST level to a much more, to a lower level, but then get rid of exemptions as well. I don't think we should be asking, I understand the GST Council has got demands from state governments for more and more zero-rated GST, which we should do away with. Because you need income. You need revenue from GST to back some of the social welfare schemes. And I am completely with the government when it comes to making sure that we address poverty. And we must address poverty well. I think I am absolutely supportive of a lot of the government schemes that have come up in terms of Ayushman Bharat and digital, the rural digital economy. I mean, creating the digital fiber cables for the digital economy in rural India. I'm fully for, the Har Ghar Mein Nal and the Bijli and everything else that the government is trying to do. But all this takes a lot of, revenue generation. So instead of trying to just, tax every single revenue stream and not getting any benefit out of doing that, I think we should judiciously look at how do you get revenue from these tax streams in a way that actually helps you to, collect more tax.
I'll ask you about the southern states, but before that I have a question. Are you suggesting that we should completely do away with 28% slab? Because government's argument is that there are a lot of luxury items which are not consumed by common Indian, so everything cannot be taxed at 18% or 12%.
I don't buy that argument at all because, when you look at the amount you're collecting on high value items from an absolute point of view, it more than makes up for reducing the GST level. There's often that, analogy made that, oh, well, if you can you afford to, apply the same GST on a bicycle and an Audi car? And yes, you can, because a bicycle costs just a few thousand. An Audi car can go up to 1 crore. So the amount you collect with even an 18% GST is 18 lakhs for an Audi and, a few hundreds for a bicycle. So I don't think you should be looking at it that way. I think you should look at how much consumption can happen. Moreover, remember, hotels are a classic example of where the 28% GST is affecting occupancy. And the hotel industry is a big employer because being a service industry, it employs a large number of people.
It's hitting
when
employment
occupancy is down, you lay off jobs. And the people who get hit are the lowest, at the lowest level. That's not a good thing. And that's why I think we have to look at it very differently. And I think that's where you need the stakeholders to be involved. Governments must work with all the stakeholders to come up with the right solutions.
You think government needs to be more receptive?
I think they are becoming more receptive because I did see the finance minister reach out to, India Inc. She went and reached out to all the industry bodies and
You have also written to her.
assured them that, something would be done. But I think we need to do it fast now. We don't have luxury of time on our hands. But coming to, another debate, I mean, we are here because we are trying to talk about the southern states. Now let's look at what's happening in South India. The 5 southern states have actually now become a $1 trillion economy. I think that's great. And we are almost contributing close to 40% of India's $2.7 trillion dollar economy. Of course, we were hoping to be a $3 trillion economy by the end of this fiscal, but at this 5% growth rate, I don't know how close we'll get to that. But having said that, I think you could have, in my view, that 5% might have even been lower than 5% if the southern states had not buffered it. That's my view. Because I do believe that the southern states, which had 8%, a growth rate, GDP growth rate of 8%, which was higher than the 7% that the country had, I think has to some extent buffered the GDP growth rate. And I think the southern states have an opportunity to continue to grow at a much higher growth rate than the rest of the country, because I think we've done we've done a number of things right. I think focusing on the new technologies, focusing on new businesses has actually helped the southern states greatly. You know that, Bengaluru, of course, has been the bastion of the IT sector. Right. Telangana and Andhra have done extremely well also in this respect. I think Tamil Nadu, of course, has focused both on tech and manufacturing. And I think if you look at ease of doing business, I can tell you that the southern states actually are much better in terms of addressing ease of doing business. Out of all the states, I know Telangana is the most aggressive. They have a fantastic reputation of ease of doing business, but so has Karnataka. And I think if you look at all this, the social and human metrics that we are talking about, even there, I think the southern states do better than the northern states. Right. Literacy, for sure, I think we have a much higher literacy level than the northern states. So all in all, the social indicators combined with the GDP growth rates and the kind of new age technologies that we have nurtured and grown very robustly has actually helped us to actually get to this $1 trillion economy pretty rapidly. Because if you remember, India itself joined the $1 trillion club in 2007. So in just about a decade later, the 5 southern states have now quickly come up to that level. So I think it's no mean feat.
Right. I'll ask you last 2 questions. One in continuation of what you were saying. Now, southern states are already at a $1 trillion economy level. What will it take to take them to $2 trillion level? Because obviously there is going to be that gravity which will play on the booming sectors like IT and biotechnology.
Well, I think it's very robust and pragmatic policies that have got us here, and we need to make them even more pragmatic and even more robust. I think there are enormous opportunities based on the digital economy. I think the southern states can deliver on that digital economy. I think the southern states definitely can also innovate much greater than northern India, because I'll tell you why. We have 100 R&D centers of innovation, global companies, all located in this part of the country. That actually is a great boon for fostering the kind of innovation ecosystem here. We have a lot of co-shared co-working spaces created in this part of the country, which is really generating a huge startup economy. And I think that has actually boosted the southern states' opportunity and potential of becoming now a $2 trillion economy.
Right. I'll ask one last question. You mentioned word economic emergency. Now, if you go by the textbook theory of economics, before you realize, actually economic emergency can very easily slip into the economic disaster zone. And we are in a stormy place as far as global economy is concerned. How serious now this threat of a prolonged, sustained economic slowdown is on Indian economy?
So Mihir, you made a very important point. The reason I'm saying this is a very, very loud alarm bell is because we are also impacted by a global slowdown. See, there is a global recessionary trend taking place. We do have opportunities today. Let's be very honest. I mean, there is a geopolitical battle being fought between the US and China. There are a number of free trade agreements being sought after by various parts of the economies in the world. I think India has a very big opportunity to shift many of those Chinese opportunities to India. But the point is, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. We have the skills, we don't have the infrastructure. I think that's where the government actually can also kickstart the economy in a big way. I think focusing on infrastructure is going to be extremely important because that's what China did when it got onto its growth trajectory. I think India will have to get onto that infrastructure investment cycle along with private sector to kickstart that economy. To me, that's the nearest term opportunity. I mean, we are seeing it in a place like Bengaluru, which is really suffering, because if it had better infrastructure, I can tell you we would get much higher investment. Even though we've got pretty decent investment, I think we can get much higher investment. We can get much higher, efficiency in what we are doing. And, I can tell you that the talent pool from all over the globe would flock to this part of the world if we had better infrastructure.
Right. Kiran, your voice is always heard very seriously by government, so I hope they are listening. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope next time when we meet, we are in a much better place, talking about much better numbers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.